Years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I went down a short side street in order to loop back down my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked and I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again.
To me in 2017, when I was about 15 years old. The day was going all right. It was an average Saturday. I was just sitting on the couch in the living room, chatting with my friends online on my tablet. Besides me, only my parents were home because my older sister was hanging out with her friends. It was around 2:30 p.m. when someone knocked on the door. My mother went to check out who it was, and I looked over to the door, curious to see who it was as well. My mom looked through the peephole and she saw 2 men outside. One of them was wearing a blue shirt and the other wearing a black jacket. They were complete strangers. None of us knew either of the men, and we weren't used to receiving any visitors, canvassers, or anything like that. So since my mom didn't know them, she asked who they were, but neither of them answered that question. Instead, the man with the blue shirt said they needed to use the house. My mother obviously got creeped out by that response, like anyone would, and she asked what he meant by that. But the man just said that they needed to get in the house, but my mother responded that she was not letting them in and that they needed to leave. The man wearing the black suddenly banged on the door and tried to force it open. At that moment, my mom screamed and I jumped off of the couch. I was completely startled and I was panicking, but also frozen in shock. There were so many things going through my head, and that's when my mom turned to me and shouted for me to call the police. The man hadn't stopped banging on our door, and they started trying to kick it in. Thankfully, the hinges on our door managed to hold it in place. My father heard all the noise and came running from his room with his revolver in hand, yelling and asking, "What's going on?" But then the banging stopped, and we heard the men running away. My mother called the police. They arrived in 15 minutes. We explained what happened, but they said they couldn't do much immediately. None of us knew where they ran to or if they had any vehicle, so the cops couldn't do anything immediately, but they said they would see if they could find anything useful in the few security cameras around the area and talk to potential witnesses. The rest of the day passed by and nothing strange happened, so we thought that everything was okay, and it really seemed to be until the next day. In the middle of the night on Sunday, I was in the living room playing some games on my laptop while voice chatting with a friend on Discord. We were on vacation, so we would play games all night, but then I heard some strange noises coming from outside. They sounded like footsteps. I told my friend I had to go check something and got up. Honestly, I both thought and hoped that it would be nothing.
In my second year of college, I was lucky enough to secure a single room in the dormitory, a rare commodity that many sophomores vied for. My room was strategically placed at the very end of a long hallway, tucked away in a secluded nook of the building. This unique placement made my room a hidden gem of sorts, offering the perfect balance between social interaction and personal space. It was ideal for both late-night study sessions and uninterrupted sleep, with the added bonus of being a cozy spot for inviting friends over. The first few weeks of the semester flew by in a whirlwind of classes, social events, and the usual college hustle. I had settled into a comfortable routine, juggling academics and my social life with relative ease. My room, with its secluded location, played a significant role in this balance, offering a sanctuary where I could retreat and recharge. However, this tranquility was abruptly disrupted one evening, a few weeks into the term. I was deep in concentration, poring over biology textbooks and lecture notes in preparation for an upcoming exam. The dense material demanded my full attention, making me oblivious to my surroundings. Suddenly, a faint noise pierced through my focus. It was a soft, almost hesitant tapping on my door. The sound was so subtle that I initially doubted my own ears, questioning whether it was just a figment of my overworked mind. "Come in," I called out, assuming it might be one of my friends stopping by for a late-night chat or study session. But there was no response, no creak of the door opening. Curiosity piqued. I rose from my desk and made my way to the door, only to find the hallway deserted. I even peeked around the corner, half expecting to catch a glimpse of someone playing a prank. But there was nothing, just the empty, dimly lit corridor stretching out before me. Shrugging off the incident as a peculiar anomaly, I returned to my room, leaving the door slightly ajar this time. A silent invitation should the mysterious visitor decide to return. Yet, the night remained undisturbed, the silence unbroken save for the occasional rustle of pages and my pen scratching against paper. The next night, after a long day filled with lectures and lab sessions, I was more than ready to call it a day. I had just settled into bed, the soft glow of my bedside lamp casting a warm light across the room, when the silence was shattered once again. This time, the tapping had evolved into a more assertive knocking, persistent and impossible to ignore. "Who's there?" I called out, a hint of annoyance creeping into my voice. But as before, the knocking ceased abruptly, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. Fueled by a mix of irritation and curiosity, I leaped out of bed and flung the door open, only to be greeted by the same empty hallway. A quick dash to the corridor's end revealed nothing. The mysterious knocker had vanished without a trace. Determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, I brought up the incidents to my dorm mates the following day. I inquired half-jokingly if anyone was pulling a late-night prank on me. Yet each person I asked denied any involvement, their responses ranging from genuine bafflement to mild concern. Despite my suspicions, there seemed to be no obvious prankster among my peers. But the true test came the following night, when the knocking returned with a vengeance. It was louder, more insistent, as if the person behind the door was desperate to be heard. I was torn between a desire to ignore the disturbance and a growing urge to confront the source of the noise. After a moment's hesitation, fueled by a sudden surge of courage, I decided to face the situation head-on. I swung the door open, only to be met with the now familiar sight of an empty hallway. However, this time, I was determined not to let the mysterious visitor escape. I raced down the corridor, my heart pounding in my chest. As I rounded the corner, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure disappearing around the far end of the hallway. Adrenaline coursing through my veins, I sprinted after the shadowy form, only to watch in disbelief as a door at the end of the hallway, a door leading to the communal bathroom, swung shut. Without a second thought, I barged into the bathroom, the harsh lights flickering to life as I hit the switch. The room was eerily quiet, the air tinged with the sterile scent of disinfectant. My eyes scanned the space, landing on the closed stall doors. A feeling of unease began to settle in my stomach, but I pushed it aside, determined to confront whoever was behind this bizarre game. Approaching the stalls, I noticed a pair of heavy boots visible under one of the doors. My breath caught in my throat as I reached out and pushed the stall open, only to be met with a baffling sight. The boots sat there, abandoned, with no sign of their owner. And then, breaking the silence, a chilling laugh echoed through the bathroom. It was a sinister sound, devoid of humor, reminiscent of a deranged mind. The laughter sent shivers down my spine, erasing any semblance of bravery I had mustered. Panicked, I fled the bathroom and sprinted back to my room, locking the door behind me. My mind is racing with questions and fear. Who was this person? Why were they targeting me? The next morning, I was a man on a mission, determined to uncover the truth behind the nocturnal disturbances. I questioned everyone on my floor, delving into their whereabouts during the previous nights. But each inquiry led to a dead end. No one else had heard the knocking, and everyone I spoke to vehemently denied any involvement in what was quickly becoming a personal nightmare. The mystery deepened as the days passed, with no further incidents to shed light on the identity or motives of my unseen tormentor. The eerie silence that had once been a source of comfort now felt oppressive, a constant reminder of the unexplained events that had disrupted my peace. In the end, the only certainty was the unsettling impression left by the laughter I had heard, a sound that seemed to belong to an older, possibly deranged individual. This thought alone was just creepy, a chilling reminder of the unknown that lurked within the seemingly safe confines of my college dormitory.